Okay. Hey, folks, this is Waylon Lewis. I'm coming to you live from Boulder, Colorado, and I'm here with congressional candidate and on good human, Mark Williams.
Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we actually, you were just mentioning, I've interacted a little bit before. I think I missed you. My fault. My apologies. A year late.
All good.
When you were at Guyam. So tell us about your background generally, and why on earth would you want to serve in Congress, which has got to be a tough job.
Well, let me answer the second question first.
Sure.
Right? The Republic is on fire. Right. This is the first time in my life where I feel like there is an existential threat.
Everyone says that all the time, and I feel like I would agree. I think anyone looking at Trump's tweets of the day would agree. But there's also this quality of, like, in the 60s, you know, the civil rights movement. Like, America's always on fire on some level, right?
Well, I mean, you know, I think it's more on fire now than it's been, at least since I've seen it. I haven't seen the country this polarized since I can vaguely remember when I was a kid back in the 60s. And so, you know, and given the intensity of that, at least as intense as it was in the 60s, at least as intense as it was when you heard about, you know, the shooting of Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King, the riots in Watts, what's going on and what happened in Detroit. You know, you get that sensibility that's going on, and people
There's a lot of anger and fear. And
country's polarized. People are at each other's throats. So, you know.
1 second, just to encourage people, please say where you're from, and any likes or funny face emoticons will help it get out beyond the choir to everyone who can hear this super important conversation. We're going to talk about climate change, fracking, Congress, NRA, gun control, gun safety, your experience, and is there hope for this great country?
So, you know, and by way of background, so I grew up in Latin America. My mother's originally from Spain. I speak Spanish, and, you know, I basically know the Latino community from living in Brazil and Panama and El Salvador. Speak Portuguese as well. I went to school back east at William & Mary. Studied political economy, which is kind of the junction of power and money. And then went to the Air Force, flew fighter jets, went to the Gulf War, flew the F-15.
You served in the Gulf War?
That's correct. Wow. And served with the most distinguished air-to-air squadron that served there. And then came back, got out, went into the served as an intelligence officer in strategic planning around Korea, of all places. So when I see two guys with funny hair talking about how big their butts are across the Pacific, I grew up very concerned. And then I flew for the airlines for a while, plugged into the world of Zen Buddhism, decided I needed to go down the rabbit hole, wound up in Europa in '94.
I feel like your story just turned you like a Matchbox car when you go, like, so you're Air Force pilot, you know, all the service and experience, and then what? Zen Buddhism in Europa University. So tell me about that.
So, you know,
us being elephant, we have to.
No, that's the most interesting part. So, you know, when I was in the Gulf, flying missions there, things got a little crazy, as you can imagine, right? And you know, a buddy of mine, his parents were Jungian psychoanalysts, and so he gave me this book called Memories, Dreams, Reflections.
Is that by Jung? Or?
It's Jung's autobiography, and I read it, and it blew my mind.
Wow.
So then I came back to the U.S. and I've been doing...
Because you were trying to deal with your experience or maybe PTSD? Or...
No, there's no PTSD. It was just a very intense experience, and I was getting these very, very intense dreams, right? And I was like, how do I make sense of this? And so it just started opening doors for me. And then I'd been doing martial arts my whole life, and then when I got out of the Air Force, I landed in San Diego doing Aikido and Aikido Jiu-Jitsu, and these guys were Zen practitioners, and they said, you need to go to the Zendo. And I said, I don't do meditation. I'm a fighter pilot. And then they said, no, check it out. And then I went to the Zendo, and the first time I sat down, I clicked into a mind state that I knew only from one place: combat missions.
Flying,
yeah.
When you're totally in the moment.
You're so in the zone. And, you know, when people are trying to kill you, it tends to kind of bring you on spot.
Yeah. You're not texting.
You're not texting. You're thinking about your grocery list. And so as soon as I saw that I could sit down and train that, I was hooked. And that took me
such
in the
a
right
good
way.
Definition of meditation, because that's great. Thank you.
No, it's like, you know, from the world of meditation, that's shamatha at its best, right? And then flying jets.
Shamatha is the Tibetan word meaning rest, developing strength and being able to rest your mind. Your mind can actually rest in any situation.
And then as a fighter pilot, you take it to vipassana, which is the kind of spacious situational awareness that we used to call, where you can see in a hyper-dynamic environment, you can see everything that's unfolding.
Right, and that's more applicable, I guess, in a way to air, like being in the world, flying a plane.
Right.
You actually can have that awareness, not just a focus.
Exactly, exactly. To have them both at the same time, right?
I mean, I've heard about it.
Yeah.
I've studied. I've tried.
I think that's the human experience, and so So all that together, right? And then I raised my kids here in this lovely town called Boulder, and after 16, my daughter, my oldest, was in Holland going to school. She called me the day after the election in tears, saying, I'm so embarrassed to be an American. And I said, I feel you, girl. And
that's not even a partisan statement, which, you know, my dad is a Republican. There's a lot of folks who feel like our president is not particularly a Republican. He is himself. He's on his own team.
He is, you know, the result of a body politic that's fallen into Lord knows what, and now it's about it's about marketing.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what the result is. And then my younger daughter, when she woke up, she was 13 at the time. She looked at me and she goes, Daddy, how do we elect a rapist to be president?
Ooh, that's a question you don't really want to have to hear
as a dad.
Answer.
As a dad, right? And I looked at her and I said, all right, girl, it's time to get involved. So we did, you know, and that's how I stepped out. And long story I won't bore you with. I wound up as
so your daughter's asking those questions prompted you to get involved?
Yeah.
Like, really? That's your genesis?
This is no shit. And then I reached out and my wife's friends were on fire. So the women were on fire. And I looked at them and I said, tell me everywhere you're going, because I'm going to stick my nose in somewhere. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know why.
I need to do more.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people felt like that. Like, what can we do?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wrote some quote after. So I was doing all these Facebook Lives with like thousands of people on live at the same moment, like crying, which I don't do normally in public. And there was this sense of like, don't run away, don't escape, don't move to Canada, like stay here, don't fight, find what you can do to contribute, because we're going to need it. Because the fox is in the hen house.
The fox is in the hen house, exactly right. And, you know, everybody's being driven into some pretty kind of nutty behavior. So
yelling at the other side doesn't help.
No, you know, I got lots of friends who voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I flew with a bunch of guys,
right?
Conservative guys from the South and so forth. And, you know, to be able to talk to them and go, you know, what we can agree on is that we value our community, we value our children, we value our families, right? So there's a lot of places we agree.
Yeah. We value honesty, we value decency, we value bravery, which perhaps he hasn't exhibited.
No, not at all.
5 draft deferments.
Right. And when I talk to these guys, they're like, yeah, we don't know about him, right? Yeah. And because what makes our values as Americans, what makes us patriots as Americans and willing to fight for those values, he's not representing.
Wow. So you're such a Boulder creation. I feel like you're a Boulder action figure. You're an Air Force pilot. Air Force pilot who went to Naropa. So how did Naropa, because that's so if people don't know, Naropa University is one of the leading kind of alternative Buddhist founded schools in the US. We've done a lot with Naropa over the years. I mean, that's way beyond going to the Zendo and doing Aikido.
That is way beyond. That's going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I showed up at Naropa and I was classic fighter pilot. I mean, you know, just a pretty unbridled level of arrogance and just, you know, what comes with that whole package. And part of it's necessary to be doing that kind of stuff in that kind of world, right?
Did you like wear tie-dye, grow out your beard?
No, you know, I never did that. But just in terms of going down the rabbit hole of my mind, and you know, then I met my wife there, and her name's Hap, and you
met your wife at Naropa?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, you know, through the Dharma, she reached in and pulled my heart out of my chest.
Dharma Buddhism, yeah.
Yeah. And she said, wake up.
Wow.
And that changed me. And then the 2 daughters that I've had, they've just deepened that experience of kind of moving, not just from here, but actually moving from here. And it's just a different sensibility. And that opening is completely because of Naropa.
So we featured you were mentioning 2 of your mentors or teachers, Judith Zimmer Brown, wonderful feminist Buddhist teacher, Reggie Ray, great teacher on Walk the Talk Show. We could put them in the comments. Okay, so then what? So how are we? I mean, maybe we could just switch tracks and saying, okay, so fracking is coming to Boulder, Colorado. That is sort of like saying, I don't know what the analogy is, but it's like the Wicked Witch is flying into Oz, you know?
Yeah, I might say the Borg is showing up, and you know, a lot of people,
is futile.
Right? A lot of people feel that resistance is futile, and for me, this is symptomatic of what is driving our politics.
Well, and resistance is futile. If we look at fact, well, I don't agree with what I just said, but let me say why. Because for what did Longmont citizens do, for example, and then what did our Democratic governor do?
Exactly. And so for me, so what ended up happening was, you know, Longmont and Fort Collins, for that matter, and Lafayette, for that matter,
and
all local
towns in Texas, all over the country,
all over, said no more fracking. We're going to have local control, and we're going to put regulations in place that protect the health and well-being of our community.
No fracking in our town, in our county, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was, in our glorious state, the governor said he put together a blue ribbon panel, and it was a blue ribbon panel of blue ribbon experts from the industry. So now you're seeing fracking.
By industry, you're talking about the
oil and gas
permaculture industry.
Oh, yeah, not
the
quite.
The farmers market industry.
the perma-drill industry, right? And so, you know, they're drilling now 200 feet away from schools. There's planned to drill in...
Are they really?
Yeah, oh yeah. If you go up to Weld County...
How is that legal?
It's not. I mean, it shouldn't be, but it is illegal because right now the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission is protecting the interests of industry over the interests of people. So if you do a infrared camera and you look at that site, you see volatile organic chemicals pouring out and washing over the playground with children.
Yeah, I mean, just even rationally, you know, like on the CEO of Dick's last night, and we'll get to this,
right?
Or 2 days ago, was saying, you know, we heard these children talking about gun control, and our hearts were hit in that boardroom, and we made a change. Like, you would think the oil and gas industry, just on a common sense point of view, would be like, okay, yes, we want to make money, yes, we want to drill, we want to frack, but we're not going to do that 200 feet from a school,
right?
Like that crosses a line.
Right. So what is the
just
level? What is the level of arrogance of an industry that thinks it can do that? And let's crack it open a little bigger. What's the ecosystem that's in place that allows corporate interests like this to go, this game is ours, we can play it, we can play it to the fullest extent. We don't care what the optics are, we win.
How do you say I care about my own children, but I don't care about other children?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and how is it that we have something in place that allows that kind of behavior to go? And it's not just oil and gas, it's in a lot of other things as well.
And the usual answer is, well, you don't know about it, you're ignorant. Like, you know, yesterday or the day before I was interviewing someone about chocolate. We were talking about chocolate. Who was that?
That was Sean Heinrich.
Sean Heinrich, just yesterday. Wonderful Marine kind of hero trying to save sharks and manta rays and all this. And he was saying, you know, people don't know that when they're eating chocolate that isn't fair trade. There's 8 million children in Africa, slave labor, literal slave labor. But these oil and gas executives know the effect of what's happening. Yeah. They're well educated.
Yeah. Now to me, it's profit over people.
Right.
And now it's time because, you know, with everything that's going down, this is not just a single use case. This is big pharma, right? This is Monsanto, right? This is all these big companies, the 1%, the big corporations that are pushing policy because they got so much cash. And our system is so broken through Citizens United and through politicians that are willing to kind of line their pockets with this kind of money, that this is what's going on. So that ecosystem is allowed exactly that mentality to foster. And it's like, I got mine, I don't care about anything else.
So your opponent, I'm all over the place if you don't mind, it's just a conversation, but your opponent, Joe Neguse, is a longtime friend and colleague of myself. I was on the board of New Era with him for 7 years or something, and he was a co-founder there, and he's a great guy. He must be on the same side of all these issues with you, right? I mean, what are the differences maybe between you guys?
I mean, you know, the key differences are, I don't take money from corporate PACs.
So no PACs.
No PACs at all.
And he is taking money?
He's taking money from corporate PACs. And
why, I mean, without being like competitive about it or partisan or whatever, why would he need to? Because this is a Democratic stronghold, obviously, this district. Like campaign finance is what we're seeing with the NRA's influence in politics. Like, why would a good Democrat or a good Republican want to take money from anyone, really.
Because that's how the game is played. And it takes a fair amount of imagination to say you're going to break outside of that game. And
are you able to compete without taking that money?
Well, so, I'm competing on the basis of motivating and inspiring the grassroots. So it's a little bit along the lines of what Bernie Sanders did. And that's where I'm coming from.
Small donations.
Small donations as much as possible, and really inspiring grassroots people to get involved, because it's hard for me to believe you can take money from a big law firm down in Denver who's lobbied for guns, lobbied and stated on their website that they've fought for the oil and gas industry against Longmont, against Fort Collins, and against Lafayette. It's hard for me to believe that you can take that kind of money and go, hey, thanks.
Wait, Joe is taking that kind of money?
That's what it looks like.
What organization is that?
That's Holland and Hart and Brownstein and Hyatt.
Sounds like quite a law firm, right?
Yeah, those are powerhouses in the lobbying industry. And so, they just did an article on Holland and Hart was lobbying for, high capacity, magazines, and they were lobbying Hickenlooper for that. So, personally, that's why I don't work in a corporate law firm. I never want to work in a corporate law firm, but those, they play both sides. That's part of the game. When you're part of the kind of establishment game, that's what you're expected to buy into. Joe's not a bad guy.
No, he's a great guy.
But he's like in this ecosystem. That's
so this might be a good point, that if Joe or others are watching who know Joe, like, this is a good moment, if this is true, publicly divest yourself of those. Return that money.
Because
we need to, until we kind of undo Citizens United, Republican and Democrat, like, we can't have a real functioning democracy.
Right. And this is a safe blue district, the second district.
So if we can't do it here,
we have to walk the talk here. It can't just be, Citizens United is this thing far away and, we'll get there one day. Because honestly, the Democrats, when they're in power, they don't go after money that much. And when the Republicans are in power, they don't go after money that much. So if we do it here and we do it in the district, then this district can lead the country, and we say, you know what?
Yeah.
We're not taking any money. We're going to walk the talk, right? And
walk the talk.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to show.
That's the name of our video series. So
there you have it.
Nice brown notes.
Hashtag walk the talk. Well done.
Nice.
So, for me, it's about, okay, let's do that here. Let's show the rest of the country how we lead, and let's show how we pull money out of politics, and let's do it from the grassroots up instead of vice versa. That's the game.
Amen.
And if we want change in this critical time, we have to have the imagination and the creativity to think outside the box, and we have to ask these hard questions. Because if we don't ask the hard questions, we're just doing the same crap over again, and we're not going to get anything different. So it's time to ask the hard questions.
So how's the campaign going on a practical level? Do you feel like you have a chance?
Yeah. Well, heck yeah, I feel like I have a chance. If I no kidding didn't feel like I had a chance, I'd be out of here. Right.
So you're not an issue candidate. You're running to win.
I'm running to win, and I'm running to say we have to change. We have to do things differently. And the stakes are so bloody high right now.
Yeah.
That if we don't change, the cynicism that, for example, my 20-year-old daughter feels.
Right.
Why would she feel that there can be any change when all she sees is Democrats and Republicans playing the same game? Why would she feel that politicians are going to be any different when she says, Democrats taking money from the NRA just like the Republicans? Why would she feel that anything's different?
When you look at the list, it's like, and again, I'm not trying to be partisan about, I respect Republicans, but there's a huge difference between the two parties.
I get it. And, when you start looking at stuff and you go, how does the money flow? Like if you look at Big Pharma, they're equal opportunity payees. They'll pay any side, right? When you look at health insurance companies, same thing.
It's so confusing, though, because on some level, the parties are playing the same game. On some level, they're very different, and they're not. There's real differences. And on another level, we want to support progressive candidates, at least here in Boulder, but we don't want more partisanship. I don't want to send you or Joe to Washington just to beat up on the other side. I want people who can work together, like our Senator Udall used to be so good at.
Yeah. So, I'm running as a Democrat because I believe in the values of Democrats. I believe in what FDR did. I believe in what LBJ did.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Great Society. You're talking about New Deal.
Yeah, the New Deal, Great Society. Those programs fundamentally changed America.
Civil rights,
Yeah. And so, I'm running as a Democrat, but I believe we need to move forward by looking back at the values that brought us together. And those values were values that brought us together as a people. And those are the values that allow us to reach across the aisle. Now, having flown with a bunch of guys who are, Trump folks, and having kind of hung out in that world, I know how to talk to those folks. And my desire is not to go there and just throw sand in people's face.
That's what I was going to say. Is how can you model that kind of conversation where you're talking with people who, to paraphrase your daughter, like voted for a R word. Yeah. I mean, it's such an intense word. Voted for a rapist. How do you have a civil conversation, which is something Elephant prides itself on. We, in Instagram and on Facebook and in our blogs, we remind people we can be agreeable and disagree.
Right. So, here to me is where, the kind of authenticity in the way that, say, Naropa talks about it, right? So, if we're moving from just a highly conceptual, heady place, then we're just throwing ideas at each other and we're talking at each other, right? If we're moving just from this gut place and there's just a lot of emotion and anger and all that kind of stuff, then it's just, Yeah,
it's like Red Sox, Yankees. It's way worse. You're just like, you see them as on a different team.
Exactly. Yeah. But what happens if we have a different vision of leadership? What happens if it's not just the creativity and the courage, but the compassion, right? And the empathy to reach out to somebody else and not show up with an agenda, but go, here's the common ground. Here's what we believe in, right? As two human beings, as two Americans, and here's what the Constitution, this phenomenal document that's like this guideline for us in terms of what we could aspire to, right? So how do we hold the values of Americans and how do we come together to bring communities together in a way that really creates politics 2.0? So it's not the same nonsense. It's leading by convening and having conversations with people in a new way, which is not just here, but actually from here. And so we're moving from a new style of leadership, and people are demanding that, and people want that heart quality, because if you're just in Washington,
and Republicans do too. Republicans love their children. They love their grandchildren.
Absolutely.
They love their country.
So
there's a lot of love.
Exactly. And if we come together as human beings, not as little creatures of politics or little creatures of ideology, and we're not just marching to the orders of
Twitter,
muddy interest or social interest or whatever, right?
Just this sort of aggression and superficial kind of yelling at each other.
But holding true to our values at the same time. What I'm not saying is that we're going to compromise and give everything away so that we can get along, right?
Right.
It's like we got to hold true to our values, because those values are kind of what make us complete. And I think that from those values, we can move in directions. I mean, there's a good old boy, as they say, that's a friend of mine from West Texas. And he's a conservative Republican. And I was down visiting. My mother lives in El Paso, and she runs a women's center for undocumented folks who come across, and she teaches English to them. And I was talking to him, and he said to me, he goes, Willie, and that was my call sign in the Air Force. He's like, Willie, I'm thinking about this Medicare for all, and given how broken my health is and my healthcare system, it's making sense to me. And this is a good old boy conservative from West Texas.
Right.
So the times, they are changing, and we have to have, in this district especially, the vision, the creativity, the imagination to go, politics 2.0, we're going to define that here. And, we have rural, we have agriculture, we have mountain, we have urban, we have brilliant minds, we have a strong base of grassroots activists that can lead us out of this.
Right.
And the wealth in this community, in the whole district, we can do some really amazing shit here.
Yeah. Great entrepreneurs, great businesses, great problem solvers and scientists and athletes and all that.
Imagine if we had the leadership to bring all that to bear. And that to me is like, for me, it's not just about going to DC. For me, it's about showing up here and bringing people together here from all walks of life, from all parts of the district, and going, let's show the world what politics 2.0 looks like.
Amen. So let's continue on that a little bit. So if you're talking with one of your Air Force friends, or really anyone we might disagree with on gun control, which is a very current issue, obviously, and an ongoing issue. And if we don't do something to change it, it will just keep happening, as we've seen.
Right.
Every country on earth doesn't see the kind of school shootings that we see here. So we know there's a problem, and we're just a very unique country in terms of our relationship to guns.
Yeah.
some of which is beautiful and great, and responsible gun owners are not the problem.
Yep.
Some of which is a problem.
Yep.
So what is your view on how do we go forward on this issue, and how do you talk about it with those you might disagree with?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at the polling and if you look at the Republicans and where they land on this stuff, I mean, I think it's upwards of 65% of Republicans now want changes in gun laws and all that kind of stuff. So,
and that's a huge percentage.
Yeah, and it's so
like no president ever gets 65% approval. I mean, it's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the NRA members, right, it's pretty up there as well. It's north of 50% that want changes to the gun laws.
Wow.
So,
and only 20% of gun owners are NRA members in the U.S. So there's a lot of hunters or responsible gun owners who don't go in for this sort of partisan bashing that we see in NRA ads.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a gun owner, and I've taught my daughters.
Right, you're a gun owner.
Yeah, I've taught my daughters how to shoot a rifle because I want them to understand what the business end of a weapon is. Exactly.
I was trained as a kid. Yeah.
So and my relationship with the NRA, when I was 12 years old, I did their safety course.
Right.
And that's what the NRA was
That's
about.
why I was trained, just to know how to handle it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so up until like the late 70s, and then there was a hostile takeover and whatever about the NRA, but now the NRA is this political thing.
Yeah, it did switch at some point. The NRA used to be like Boy Scouts.
Yeah, it was a hunter group. It was a safety group, right? And then Charlton Heston, and then whatever. There's a whole long, ugly history, which is interesting to read.
That is interesting.
But they weren't, they are like, they're one of these creatures that emerged as money started going into the world of politics, and they said, we're going to do this. And they're emblematic of money in politics, right? So, for me, the question is, as a military guy, I would qualify every year for a handgun. I'd qualify every year for an M16. That's just what.
What do you mean you qualify?
You have to show up at the range and show.
Oh, you have to re-qualify.
Exactly. You have to show every year that you knew what the heck you were doing with these things. Right. So to me, that's an important place to start. And then the idea that you can have assault weapons in the middle of a community is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah. We've all seen photos of people like walking around town with them, or go in the grocery store with them on their back. Like when I was in Israel, that's like I just visited there a couple years ago, and you see people walking around with assault rifles, but they're military.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. So for me, in the world that we want, to say you can have I say ban assault weapons. I got a whole thing on my website. You can check it out. But for me, it's
what is your website?
Markforcolorado.com. MARKFOR, Colorado.com.
Okay.
And you can see it all there. And for me, it's about, common sense gun control. And, we got to get rid of automatic.
So any articles on gun control recently we could put in?
There's a ton. Yeah, there's a ton talking about that school shooting and, everything that happened there. So for me, it's clear. And then the question is.
And right here in Colorado, Columbine started off this whole
Exactly.
So we feel it.
Right. And we have to, now you peel back the onion and go, the people that are running for offices in different offices, what have they said about this? What have they said about this? Some have come out strong. Some haven't come out strong. So it's important to ask that question.
Are you talking about Joe right now?
No, I'm just talking about all politicians because.
So are you and Joe pretty much the same on this issue?
I actually don't know where Joe stands on this. I came out pretty clear and said I'm in favor of banning assault weapons, and then I posted.
He would be.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. But clarity's nice. So what else do we want to talk about? That's fracking, climate change. You're strong on that. So what's your view? So climate change is to me, the greatest threats on this planet. There's two of them. One is nuclear proliferation, or not having a handle on where the nuclear weapons are at around the world. And our State Department, et cetera, has sort of lost the narrative on that one with the current administration. And a lot of good employees have been quitting. And then climate change. These are two existential threats to humanity that freak me out. So where are you at on climate change?
So
what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's time we double down. If you look at legislation, there's a thing called the Off Fossil Fuels for Better Future Act by this Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, and it basically says full transition to renewables by 2035, removing subsidies from oil and gas. Right. And then
we love to talk about libertarian or Republican, are on the side of oil and gas generally, or coal, but they get immense subsidies.
Yeah, it's corporate welfare,
which is socialism.
It's corporate welfare, and it's the Republican wing of the Democratic Party that's on board with that kind of welfare. And they say, oh, there's too many jobs, and I say, A guy can earn a great living, or a woman can earn a great living swinging a chain on a well. You can make good $100,000 a year. Wow. Those folks can transition to different jobs as long as we pay for it, and that's what we need to do. And I talked to my 20-year-old. This freaks her way out. Yeah. And I get it. And so then the question is,
if you're old, maybe climate change doesn't freak you out because you're going to have a decent 20 years. Things will get hot.
Right.
But we're already seeing more wildfires and
it's
more frequent and stronger hurricanes and tornadoes.
Yeah.
But if you're 20 right now and you're looking at another, 65 years or whatever on average.
Right. No, it's a game changer. And so to me, the policy, right, is straightforward. It's like accelerate to renewables and let's get rid of oil. It's just we got to get there sooner rather than later.
There's great jobs in renewables.
Absolutely.
You cannot, outsource solar installation jobs. You can't outsource wind installation jobs.
And as long as you make those good union paying jobs, right? Then you got a great thing going. So for me, it's really straightforward. Let's accelerate the transition.
Yeah.
And as a politician, don't take money from oil and gas, right? Because then it's tough to stay on the up and up around all these issues, right? And if you're taking money from oil and gas, it's like, are you really on board with climate change? And then let me just make a shout out to Colorado Rising. Here in Colorado, they're saying 2,500 foot setback on fracking. That means instead of doing the 200 feet away from a school, 2,500 foot back from any dwelling that has a human in it kind of thing. I don't know the particulars, but that 2,500 foot setback is starting to bring like some rational thinking into where in God's name are we fracking?
How far is 2,500 feet?
Call it a half mile.
Is that like 100 yards or?
Well, it's about a half mile. So, 2 laps around the high school track.
That.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the best way to think about it. But that initiative, it's like that starts putting some sanity in terms of like health and well-being and the oil and gas thing. And then again, you got to look around and go, who are the politicians that are supporting that? Right. And so
I personally would still, 2,500 seems like the minimum. Like I still wouldn't be that comfortable given the evidence of earthquakes in Oklahoma and the poisoning of the water and the wasting of water in a drought state.
Yeah. The fundamental position is ban fracking.
Yeah. I'm not even, I just think 2,500 should be like a good middle ground we can agree on, a minimum.
Yeah. And that's where they've landed. And that's a first step on the way, hopefully, towards banning it altogether sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But folks need to get behind that. It's Colorado Rising, and it's important, and it's going to be on the ballot. Cool. That's super important.
Nice.
So, and I want to shout it out, and I want other politicians to jump on that bandwagon because it's important for us.
So I interviewed Christopher before you. I understand whatever. But he's making some decisions right now. But and I told him, and I told you before this, I was on board with New Era and Joe for many years. I can't imagine not voting for him. At the same time, one of my central, I love the guy. One of my central complaints about this is he came out, and this is a very Colorado issue. But I think it happens in every state. Gerrymandering, we all identify as a problem. It undercuts democracy. It's where you kind of game the system so that their vote really doesn't count generally. So what Joe, and I think Congressman Polis, who's also a friend and has been on the show many times, I think must have cooperated with, is Joe came out the day after Jared Polis, our current congressperson, who I just saw at lunch yesterday. He announced he was going to run for governor. We're going to interview him on this show about that. And Joe came out the next day, correct me if I'm wrong, with a whole list of endorsements that would have taken time to organize. So basically, they're kind of gaming the system in a different way. They're anointing the next congressperson instead of allowing we citizens to hear both sides and or multiple sides and vote. How do you feel about that? Like basically, you're coming out of the gate a mile behind. Talk about the running track of 2,500 feet. You're coming out 1,000 feet behind.
Yeah. So, again, I look at the system and I go, how well did it serve us to do that, say, in 2016? Because all it did is create a lot of conflict within the party, between, say, the Hillary folks and the Bernie folks, right?
Where the DNC was kind of understandably, Bernie wasn't. I always defend. I'm the only person I think who defends the DNC, but I'm like, Bernie is not even a Democrat. He's a proud independent. Yeah. So of course they're going to have it in for Hillary.
Yeah, and to me, it's like let's get that dialogue, right? Let's have a dialogue.
I donated, but I get the DNC.
Right. And, you know, and I could get the logic
Right.
if this district was super competitive, say like Perlmutter's district, right?
Right.
You
like
might
we
be able
have
to say,
take a strong candidate. We have to
Yeah.
win. We have to support him.
right. But in this district, you're
Fair
going to get a Democrat.
Right.
You're going to get a Democrat.
Because we're pretty blue.
It's gerrymandered blue.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can't say, well,
We're navy blue.
we are as blue as this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're deep blue. And so when it's all said and done, it's like, why would you want to do that? And Jim Martin, who put an op-ed in the Daily Camera a week after, said, I think the title of the op-ed was, Have the Democrats Learned Nothing? And again,
Right.
this isn't about, Joe's a nice guy, right?
He's a great guy.
But this is about an ecosystem
Yeah.
that's corrupt. And it's not small d democratic, listening to what the constituents want.
Yeah, in a democracy, my complaint, and I talked about this in the Christopher interview, who was running against you and Joe, is it devalues our votes. Like, why should I vote?
Right. And why wouldn't I, again, I go back to my 20-year-old. Why wouldn't she be cynical going, look how the game is rigged?
Yeah, it's the whole like backroom cigar filled whatever cliche. It's still kind of happening, except it's in Boulder, so it's like probably marijuana filled backroom.
Well, check it out, man. Check it out. This is, so people go, how come there's no women running in this race? Fair question, right? Super progressive district, right? We got some powerhouse female politicians, you know, in Fort Collins and certainly down here in this area, right?
So why?
Riddle me this, Riddler. Well, I'll tell you.
Because why would you run when it's already kind of chosen?
Well, exactly. So if you look at going back to that op-ed from Jim Martin, they basically put the word on the street that this is our candidate. And it wasn't done in Boulder with a bunch of guys smoking joints. It was done in a law firm down in Denver where the power brokers come together and go, this is the guy. And everybody else stand down. And again, this isn't me. This is Jim Martin reporting on this.
I don't know Jim Martin. But
Anyway, he wrote an op-ed, and he's one of the people that writes a fair amount of op-eds.
Okay.
So he heard this was the word on the street. And actually, I was chair of the Boulder County Democratic Party.
Oh.
Because I got elected. That was a different story. But anyway.
So you're not like coming out of left field, no pun intended. It is, I guess, left field. But you're known, you're around.
Right. I was chair of the Democratic Party. That was my first political thing. And I said, okay, I'm going to run because I'm going to change the dialogue, and I got elected chair of the Boulder County Democrats. Mm-hmm. When this whole thing went down, I got phone calls going, dude, you should run for this. And I was like, run for Congress? What, are you crazy? And they said, yeah. They're telling everybody to stand down, and they got nothing on you. You should run for this because
what do you mean got
this.
Nothing on you?
In other words, I haven't been part of the establishment game. And they said, nobody has anything on you. And I got two kinds of phone calls from people in the inside world.
Yeah.
First kind of phone call was, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
You can't do this. And then we'd have a conversation.
And that's like almost Laura Ingraham level.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get democracy. Anyone can and should run.
Exactly.
Maybe they don't have a chance
if
they're like nuts or something, but like this is a democracy. Like I grew up in like Lincoln ran, he grew up in a cabin. I could be president. I've always thought that my whole life. And everyone should. Especially these days, girls and minorities.
Right.
Everyone should.
And growing up in Latin America where there was no middle class and there was no politics, it was dictator, I looked to America and I was like, that's what makes the country great, right? So when I got these phone calls, they're like, you can't do this. And when we sussed it out, it was basically, it's not your turn. You haven't done your time.
Right, but that doesn't make sense because, so I moderated the congressional debate between Jared and Will Shafroth and
Joan Fitzgerald.
At the Boulder Theater with New Era. I moderated that years ago, and it was Joan's turn.
Yep.
She had been the head of the...
Yep. She was a Senate Majority Leader. Yep.
Thank you. And Jared skipped in the line because he drowned that, and I supported and voted Jared, but he drowned that race in record-setting money. Right. So that's funny that they're now talking about wait your line in turn.
Yeah, and the second
Jared, outgoing congressman, skipped.
And the second kind of phone call I got was, hey, you're doing a great job as chair.
Right.
We take care of people.
Right.
You need to know.
We'll send more instruments to your meetings. Yeah. We'll make your meetings, we'll get new folding chairs.
And better still, it was like, there's people that are going to be term limited in a couple of years. We'll be looking at
we'll anoint you for some other role if you play ball.
It's take your ticket in line.
Damn. None of this is democracy.
No.
It's strategy. And strategy is fine.
Look, I'm not saying that I'm not a fool. I'm not naive. I get how that the game's played that way. But
Joe came out the day after Jared announced with every endorsement that matters.
Which tells you.
Do you have any endorsements that you peeled off from him?
No. Because if you're playing the political game, why would you not come down on what appears to be the sure bet? You see what I'm saying? So,
I'm friends with half these people. It's so disappointing.
No, what is it? My daughter tells me: don't hate the players, hate the game.
Right. All right. Smart daughters.
Yeah, and that's where I'm coming from. It's like, I heard somebody call it you've heard of the military-industrial complex? This is the political-industrial complex, and that's what it is. And that's why it's time to take it on.
So how are you going to be more than, Will Shafaroff was kind of like you in that last round. Everyone loved him, didn't really have a realistic chance, ran a great campaign. How are you going to do more than that?
Well, I think what's in the zeitgeist is different than it was in 2008.
That's for damn sure. Although 2008 was the year of Barack Obama. I mean, zeitgeist was pretty exciting back then.
Yeah, but you did not have the amount of people who are looking at how broken the whole bloody thing is and going, this ain't working.
Right.
And we got to step up to make change. And we have the madman in the White House who's keeping the fire stoked all the time.
Right.
So that to me is the game changer.
So markforcolorado.com.
Yep.
When is the there's something right now, right?
Yeah. So the caucuses are coming out. We're petitioning on the ballot, so we're collecting signatures. So if you want to help out, reach out and grab a petition and grab some signatures if you dig what you're seeing. The next thing that's important is your congressman is going to be elected on the 26th of June. Period. End of question. Because this thing is gerrymandered blue, the Democratic primary on the 26th
it's not the election, it's the primary.
It's not the election. So if you're unaffiliated, and most people don't know this, if you didn't sign up to be a Democrat, or if you got a little pissed off in 16 and said, I'm not a Democrat anymore, you can vote in that primary. You'll get a ballot as an unaffiliated.
Independents, and that would help you a lot. Independents and Democrats, primary is when? June
26th.
26th. And you got to be registered, obviously.
You got to be registered to vote. But
where do people go to register to vote?
You go to Secretary of State of Colorado's website, and you can do it lickety-split.
And that's good for everyone.
48 hours later, you can do it. So show up June 26th. That's when it matters. That's when your voice can be heard.
Yeah.
If you want somebody who's an independent Democrat, and not somebody who
can talk to the other side and all that.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm a Joe fan, but you have been very impressive and grounded and good guy.
I'll try to shake you out of it.
Oh, no. Good man.
All right. I appreciate
Mark
it.
Williams,
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Do we have any comments or questions? We're good. All right. Sayonara.